Hello, welcome to Billy's Books. I'm finally going back to my roots. Instead of doing another Star Wars book, I'm finally doing a history book. This one is about Andrew Jackson. It's by Brian Kilmeade and Don Yeager. Andrew Jackson, Miracle of New Orleans. Now, I bought this with a gift certificate for a stack of books. I thought was really cool. I had the whole stack of books shipped to me, and they were sitting on my table, and then this one was on top because it's the smallest. My friend, he came in, he was like, "Brian Kilmeade, that's a Fox News guy!" Like the first thing. And I was like, well, I didn't realize that. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Yes, Brian Kilmeade does say stupid things, which I'll get into. But this is really about the Miracle of New Orleans. It's really about the Battle of New Orleans. Which is just kind of a military tactics book, and in that sense, it's kind of apolitical. Or the politics are so old that it's okay that it's okay that the British Empire is seen as bad at this point. We all can generally agree that the British Empire was bad back in 1815, and they were kind of jerks, but they were invading, trying to reclaim what they lost, and try to keep the Americans from getting too out of hand. Anyway, let's go back to the beginning. So this is the result of what we call the what we call the War of 1812. What the Canadians they call the war with America or whatever, because back then Canada was still part of the Empire, and we attacked them and kind of got our asses handed to us when we went up there. During that war with Great Britain. There were some battles that went north that were poorly handled and screwed up. The war with the British was more encouraged by the people in the west on the frontier who were up against the Mississippi because of the disputed Louisiana territory that was still French but went into our hands, and the British didn't like that and didn't want to respect it. One of the main reasons for the war was the British kept on imprinting U.S. sailors into Royal Navy service, of course without their permission, and they were basically disrespecting American autonomy in the Atlantic Ocean. They were also inciting the Indians to attack the settlers in the West. Americans didn't like that very much. However, the New Englanders didn't want to go to war with England because they still had good, strong trade despite the imprinting of U.S. sailors. Andrew Jackson lost his family to great violence lost his family to the British in the American Revolution, and he wanted revenge against them, so he welcomed the war. He had a reputation as a drinker and a gambler, but it was ambitious and charismatic, and those rough and tumble guys. Once again, these Fox News guys love rough and tumble, disrespect everything, cats, especially when they're really strong. The whole vibe of this is a kind of a strong man worship. We have quotes like, "Not even a near fatal gun brawl could keep Andrew Jackson from doing his duty." Before he was a general, he did double duties as a lawyer and a plantation owner. Of course, there's no mention of slaves, just that he was a really popular plantation owner. They really liked the people, really liked him. He was also a Tennessee militia leader before he got into the army for real. The big deal is, why are we talking about the Battle of New Orleans? Because at this point, the United States kind of pressed up against the Mississippi River and stopped there, because the other side was the Louisiana Territory, which was passing through hands from the Spanish to the French and then to us, thanks to Napoleon. But the British didn't really respect or even regard the transfer of the Louisiana Purchase from Spain to France, let alone France passing it on to America. Of course, they didn't respect anything the French did at that point, because they had just finished a war with Napoleon, or were still in it at this point, because the War of 1812, as we sometimes call it, lasted several years. Yes, so the bias again shows that President Madison didn't want war, and he he was an East Coast weakling, and all of his cabinet were very, very bad war planners. During some battles before the Battle of New Orleans, he made Jackson, had to deal with conflicting orders about going down to New Orleans. Oh, halfway down there, they told no, you should go back, and he'd get really mad, and he said, I'm not. These men are all trust me, and we're really going to do this. So he defied orders, and when sent to go back, he kind of didn't, or it took him much longer than it should have to do that. They had a battle out in the west somewhere, and I guess some Indians had attacked some settlements, and then he brought the army to avenge those settlers and basically destroyed the entire, all the Indians. They killed every man, but they kept the women and children, and he actually, strangely enough, adopted one of the orphaned baby boys, the Indian. Despite that, he did believe that the Indians needed to be exterminated or conquered. So New Orleans was important because it was at the mouth of the Mississippi. Whoever controlled New Orleans controlled the Mississippi River, and therefore that would make a big difference for because the Americans wanted the Louisiana Purchase, and they hadn't gotten it. They had gotten it, but they hadn't gotten it, so they needed to protect it and everything like that. But so Jackson eventually ended up being a guy in charge of it after some changes of the guard, and he realized that the British wouldn't be able to attack by the river because that river is not the kind of thing you can take up large warships. And he eventually concluded they would attack from the east based on the geography of New Orleans. They would attack from the east, so he went and defended Mobile, Alabama, where he figured they would land, and did a good job of that. They ended up landing, and then he had to go west himself with his army to protect them all the way, and he did that, and they got to New Orleans ahead of the ground, and then just started building up defenses to the east of it in anticipation of an eastern attack. But he actually, being thorough, he built up sentries and little defenses all in every direction for all the little inlets and stuff of the Delta. Jackson did a really good job of defending it, building up defenses, but they had to. Oh, anyway, so the point was the British had to do a bunch of rafts to get within the lake just to the east of New Orleans, and it was very cold because this was a January undertaking. So even New Orleans is cold in January. The Americans had the advantage because they were defending their own land, and they had the defensive positions built up way in advance of the British coming. The British had better technology, ostensibly better soldiers, and a lot more. They had more men and better and more ships and more guns and more cannons and all this stuff. So they were confident, and they were confident up until they actually got to the American defenses, wherein they found out that the defenses were strong, and oopsie poopsie, the American marksmen were really precise, and they were very well hidden, and they were just taking it out. And it was all very dishonorable, to do snipers. And even more dishonorable is the Americans shot at the British officers, which is very ungentlemanly. And it was really effective. The Americans held their ground, and the British, when they were approaching, their casualties were much, much higher. And as we know, the Americans won. So, but at a great cost to the British, they had to give up that attack eventually. So this is one of the few times I tell you the ending. Anyway, so yes, it's a Fox News book, a Fox News writer book. If you can disregard all the contradictions and paradoxes, then it's a good book about military tactics if you find it interesting. And it's got some drama and stuff. One thing I didn't mention, of course, is that the whole time he's really he's pretty sick. He's got like a wounded arm, and he's got gastrointestinal problems that makes riding on a horse painful the whole time. But he was such a hard man that he just did it anyway because gotta serve America. So if you can't do, review.